I measured my life not in years, but in silence. The silence at the dinner table, the silence in our enormous bedroom, the silence that hummed in my ears louder than any orchestra. And so, standing in the center of this deafening quiet, I began to search for sounds, the sounds of other hearts beating in rhythm with mine. I found 5, and each one led me here, to this threshold beyond which everything crumbles. Carl was working late at the office again. Lilia, wearing the little black dress he once called his favorite, went to the Museum of Modern Art alone. She stopped in front of an abstract painting, splotches of scarlet and azure. A man appeared beside her. "Looks like a scream being drowned out by the sea," he said. His name was Ethan. He was an art historian. His words weren't just a commentary on the painting. They were a key to her soul. They drank coffee in the museum's rooftop cafe. He talked, and she listened, and every glance from him was a sip of water in the desert of her loneliness. Their kiss in the elevator descending from the 5th floor was swift and quiet. His fingers gently slid across her cheek, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Ethan's breath was warm and sweet from coffee. When the elevator dinged, opening on the 1st floor, he didn't pull away, but merely parted his lips, allowing them to touch in a subtle, teasing rhythm. His palm rested on her waist, a finger tracing slow circles on the silk of her dress, and each circle sent an electric current deep within her lower belly. Walking away, she could still feel the pressure of his mouth on her lips and the searing heat of his touch, which seemed to burn through the fabric and leave an invisible mark on her skin. Marcus was the polar opposite of Carl, a bartender with tattoos to his knuckles and a laugh you could hear across the room. He flirted with her openly, unceremoniously. The night Carl forgot their anniversary, Lilia went to that bar. They danced to loud music, his hands firm on her waist. There were no intellectual conversations here, only raw animal energy. His touches were demanding, his kiss authoritative. It was an escape from Carl's refined world into one ruled by feeling, not by schedules and deadlines. In the bar's storeroom, among crates of bottles, it smelled of citrus and dust. He pressed her against the cold wall, his body a solid line of heat. His hands lifted her blouse, and his rough, calloused fingers slid over her ribs, making her shudder and exhale his name. He leaned in, and his lips scorched the skin on her neck, leaving a damp, hot trail that immediately cooled in the air. He nibbled on her earlobe, and a low, approving groan escaped his chest as she gripped his jacket, pulling him closer. Everything was loud, their ragged breathing, the clinking of bottles behind the door, the pounding of her heart in her ears. This wasn't a dance, it was an earthquake. Noah was a graduate student she met at the city library. He was shy, with intelligent eyes behind glasses. With him, everything was the opposite. He didn't rush. Their connection was built on long conversations about books, dreams, fears. They met in reading rooms, their fingers accidentally brushing as they reached for the same book. Their first intimacy happened in his small, book-cluttered apartment. He undressed her slowly, as if unwrapping a priceless manuscript. Every kiss was a question. Is this okay? Every touch was an affirmation. You are beautiful. He kissed not only her lips, but also the corners of her mouth, the base of her throat, the inside of her wrist where her pulse beat. His fingers, accustomed to turning thin pages, were incredibly gentle, exploring every curve of her body with reverent awe. In the semi-darkness, under the light of a street lamp outside the window, he whispered lines of poetry into her ear, and the words mingled with the sensations, creating new poetry on her skin. This wasn't passion, it was consecration. Leo was an old friend, a surfer living from one tide to the next. He reminded her of who she was before marriage, free and careless. They walked along a deserted beach on a cold evening. He took her hand, and they ran towards the water, laughing like children. They kissed to the sound of the waves, the sand cold beneath their bare feet, his lips salty from the sea. It was an escape into the past, an attempt to reclaim that version of herself that didn't compromise or accept loneliness in a marriage. They fell onto his jacket, thrown onto the sand. The cold air bit at her skin, but under his palms she was burning. His lips were salty, and his kiss tasted of the sea and freedom. He pulled her sweater off, and his hands slid under the thin fabric of her tank top, warming the cold skin of her stomach. The sand was coarse under her bare feet, which she wrapped around him. He held her by her hips, his fingers digging into her skin, leaving white impressions on her tan. The sound of the surf muffled their moans, and the wind snatched his voice as he repeated her name, over and over, like a mantra. It was wild, primal, and smelled of the ocean and sin. David was Carl's business partner. The irony was so bitter, Lilia could almost taste it. This was her most desperate and dangerous act. Meeting him in expensive hotels, the very same kind Carl often called her from during meetings. That evening, rain was pouring outside. In David, there was none of Ethan's warmth, Marcus's passion, Noah's tenderness, or Leo's freedom. In him, there was only emptiness, a mirror of her own. When they were together, she stared at the ceiling and thought of Carl. It was an act of self-destruction. She was no longer searching for love or escape. She was drawing a final period without even realizing it. In the luxurious hotel room, it smelled of expensive leather luggage and his cologne, the same one Carl wore. The irony tightened her throat. His kiss was authoritative, devoid of tenderness. He unbuttoned her blouse with the deft, practiced movements of a businessman. His touches were efficient, emotionless, like signing a contract. He turned her over, and her face pressed against the cool silk sheets. She saw their entangled bodies in the large mirror opposite, her own reflection, eyes wide open but empty. His hands held her wrists. There was no fire in her body, only a strange, chilling numbness and a heavy, hollow echo with every movement. A storm raged outside the window, but inside there was only a quiet, dead emptiness. Carl was supposed to be away for 3 days. Instead, he returned home after 6 hours. He wanted to surprise her, finally realizing how much he had been working. The silence in their house was shattered, not by quiet, but by muffled moans and the creak of their bed, sounds that should never have been there. He walked up the stairs and entered the bedroom, and he saw his wife and David in their marital bed. The sheets had slipped to the floor. Lily's body, which he knew by heart, was pressed against the stranger's. Her eyes, wide with horror, met his gaze. Carl's look wasn't just angry. It was empty, like a blank phone screen. There was no scream in it, only an icy, absolute understanding. He saw not just physical betrayal, he saw the desecration of their entire shared space, of every memory. Everything. He uttered just one word, his voice quiet and lifeless. And in the silence after the storm, the loudest sound of her life echoed, the sound of an end. Not of a slamming door, but of a crystal world they had once called a marriage, shattering into pieces. They divorced. Carl buried himself in work with even more zeal, but now it was work to forget, not to build a future. Lily was left alone with her choices and the ghosts of 5 men, none of whom could fill the void left by her husband. She realized too late that balance isn't the Herculean effort of one person. It's a dance for two. If one stops listening to the music, the dance turns into a fall. She searched for love on the side, but lost it at home with every missed dinner, every unspoken, "I love you." Life isn't a choice between black and white, work and family. It's about finding a rhythm. You can build a career without destroying a home, and you can seek warmth without burning bridges. Because when balance disappears, everything collapses. And sometimes, to understand the value of silence, you need to hear how loudly a door can slam.